everybody to Mill Prong on this lovely day. We're so happy that the weather has decided to be in our favor today. This is our annual board meeting, so again, we welcome everybody. We are going to have a wonderful speaker who Blake will introduce, and I didn't introduce myself. I'm Rebecca Ernest. I am the president of the Mill Prong Preservation Board and a direct descendant of the McEacherns, who bought the house from the Gilchrists in 1835. So yes. So again, we're very happy to have everybody here. We invite you all to stay after our program and take tours of the house and also tours of the cemetery. So if you see there's a sign right there, and if you go about a mile down a country road, we have two cemeteries on the property. So we invite you to go and visit those as well. And just take your time, just explore and enjoy all the hospitality that has occurred on this land since the dawn of time, I think. So we want this to be an open, welcoming place for everybody. So we do have an ongoing fundraising effort, and our treasurer, Cindy Thompson, will talk a little bit about that at the end. But we also have some keepsakes for you all. So I would be remiss if I didn't mention that. We have some mugs, and we have some books, and we have some signed prints. And so if anybody would like any keepsakes while you're here, you can visit the annex afterwards and take a piece of Mill Prong with you. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Blake to introduce our speakers.
Ernest Gilchrist was raised in the rural Sandhills in Harnett County. We had a big discussion about how they say Harnett different down in Atlanta, where he's at now. There he was exposed to unique multicultural relationships which would influence, shape, and mold him. He grew up with a fascination for journalism and the literary arts. While in high school, he served as the sports editor of the yearbook and the school newspaper. At Campbell University, he studied under North Carolina Poet Laureate Shelby Stevenson. He holds a bachelor's in business administration from Campbell and an MBA in international business from Mercer University. He was a contributor to the highly reviewed PBS documentary Voices of Over the Water. A couple months ago, I received an email that was forwarded to me by somebody else about that program, and they were going to show the documentary there at Campbell, and he was going to speak, and I couldn't make it up there. But his name's what caught my eye, that Gilchrist name. And I thought, there might be something there. So I emailed him, and he didn't email me back. He called me and said, you've been on my list to get up with. I was talking to Bill Cottle. Bill Cottle said I needed to call you. So he has Gilchrist roots deep here, just like the rest of us. And we're honored today to have him and his wife, Cynthia, with us from Atlanta. He drove all the way up from Atlanta to be with us. So, and this is his book, which he's getting ready. Second edition's getting ready to come out. Fusions of Culture: The Spirit of Argyll America Revealed. So, I'll turn it over to you, Ernest.
Good afternoon. Friends, family, and fellow keepers of the story. Before I begin my talk today, I want to sincerely thank Mill Prong Preservation's officers and board for inviting me to speak, and especially Blake Tyner. I'm honored to share this cultural platform following the footsteps of previous speakers like Dr. Michael Newton, a renowned Celtic scholar who has been instrumental in my life, Dr. Tiber Fazzetto, another Celtic scholar I had the pleasure of meeting at the first annual Celts in the Americas conference in Antigonish, Nova Scotia, and Nancy Chavis Strickland, a historian and the first Native American to speak here, and historian Jason Harper, and various other distinguished speakers. I also want to give a heartfelt thank you to my wife, Cynthia, who is accompanying me today, and to Jim and Liz Bernaski, my son-in-law's parents for making the drive up from Myrtle Beach, and to many other family and friends. Your presence today means a great deal to me. Today, I will lean heavily on the spirit of the late playwright Paul Green, who drew his own inspiration from his mentor in Chapel Hill, Frederick Henry Cox, over 100 years ago. It was Professor Cox who said, "Write about the folk you know, even better, write about the folk you are." Those words continue to guide me today. As many of you might know, I'm a participant in the PBS documentary Voices Over the Water, produced by Guy Perota and Jane Ferguson. It documents and explores the struggles and the triumphs of the Scottish diaspora in the United States, and the various voices, all seeking a sense of identity and belonging. Mill Prong Preservation is also featured in the film as well. Please give kudos to Mill Prong and to Tina Rickert and Richard Bullock for their fine contribution. My talk today is titled Argyll, America, Where History, Heritage, and Truth Collide. It's truly an honor to stand here at Mill Prong House, this jewel of Hoke County, a proud relic of the Scottish immigrant story. This house stands not just on soil, but on stories. The bold story of Highlanders fleeing oppression, crossing the Atlantic, and daring to dream again in the piney sands of North Carolina. But as I stand here today, there is irony in this moment, powerful, poetic irony, because I stand here before you not just as a guest speaker, but as a living thread in the very tapestry of this land. And this land, this Upper Cape Fear, has stories to tell. Some of them shivering with courage, some trembling with sorrow, all of them true. I am part of this story, woven from the Scottish, both the Scottish immigrant experience and the African American legacy, forged in the fields just like the ones surrounding this very house. Here I am, Ernest Gilchrist, an African American author, historian, and proud son of Harnett County, speaking at a former plantation built by an immigrant named John Gilchrist from Kentry, a peninsula in western Scotland, in the southwest of Argyll and Bute. Some of y'all might have glanced at the program and thought, what kind of Gilchrist is this? The answer, a very American Gilchrist, a great-grandson of Abe Gilchrist, born a slave in 1839 in the Upper Cape Fear River Valley. And as of today, not a known connection to John Gilchrist or his descendants. But we're trying, aren't we, Blake? We're trying to. Yeah. I'm 1/16th Scottish Highlander, or one might better express that I am 4 generations from my great-great-grandfather, Charles Clark, on my mother's side. But the rest of me descends from the African hands, not unlike the ones who cleared these fields, developed this property, and carried both the burden and the beauty of our shared Southern heritage. This cultural fusion, that colliding of stories, struggles, and survival is exactly why I'm here today to talk about what I call Argyll America. If these walls could talk, they would not speak only of the Gaelic prayers offered by John Gilchrist and his descendants. They would hum with the spirituals of enslaved Africans whose labor built the wealth of this plantation. They would echo the knowledge of native peoples who understood these rivers, these longleaf pines, this sandhill soil, long before a European foot touched it. This is the real story of Mill Prong. Not a one-dimensional monument to Highland pride, but a mosaic of cultures clashing, blending, surviving, and ultimately creating something truly American. That commitment to preserving the whole story is why Mill Prong Preservation has expanded its mission, honoring not just the Scottish settlers, but also the African Americans and Native communities whose hands, hearts, and histories shape this land. They are actively seeking family records, oral histories, and burial information, particularly for the Black cemetery on this property, mirroring the divided cemeteries of my own ancestors at Cameron Hill Presbyterian Church in western Harnett County. What is Argyll America? That messy beauty, that collision and fusion, that's the essence of what I call Argyll America. Argyll America is a dually defined hybrid word that I created that focuses on the multicultural relationships developed by the various peoples of this region. Argyll America respects the legacy of the Argyll colony of North Carolina, established in 1739, yet is inclusive, embracing the reality of other cultures that coexist in a land we know and love as America. Argyll America isn't just a place you will find on a map, even though it denotes a region of the state of North Carolina. It's a spirit, a story. The story of how Scottish settlers, enslaved Africans, free people of color, native tribes, and their descendants collided, coexisted, traded, fought, married, mourned, and prayed on the same land, under the same sky, and breathing the same pine-scented air. Argyll America is history's mixtape, a remix of languages, faiths, foods, and folkways, all stared into a tea-colored water of the Cape Fear and rooted deep like the longleaf pine. The fusion of cultures was something Paul Green understood in his bones. Born and raised in Harnett County, Green was the grandson of Scottish immigrants, but his heart, his conscience, was shaped by the African American hands working beside him in the tobacco fields. Those hands also picked cotton, and they picked stories. Paul Green listened. He studied at Bush Creek Academy, the school that grew into Campbell University. Graduated from the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. Served in the military. And from there, he walked boldly into the world as a playwright, poet, and prophet. His most famous work, The Lost Colony, an outdoor symphonic drama, still lights up the Outer Banks every year. But Green's truest masterpiece was his courage, which went beyond the page. In the serrated South, in a time when silence was safety, Paul Green spoke. When speaking truth about race could cost you your livelihood or your life, Green stood tall. he wrote In Abraham's Bosom, a groundbreaking play that exposed the raw, unvarnished reality of black life in the Jim Crow South and won a Pulitzer Prize in 1927 for doing so. Green created Little Bethel Country, a fictionalized version of our region where Scottish, African, and Native stories overlapped like the waves on the Cape Fear. Little Bethel Country was Argyll, America before I had a name for it. A world where black and white hands plowed the same fields and planted the future together. No story of Argyll, America can be told without the longleaf pine, our region's tallest historian. Loved by the Scots, who sang of it in Gaelic lullabies, revered by native peoples who harvested its gifts, exploited by African laborers whose hands bled its sap into tar and pitch, giving North Carolina its nickname, the Tar Heel State. North Carolina native Arthur Malcolm Fowler once said, "Maybe at some future time, the pine tree will be given its rightful credit. But whose hands lean against that bark? Black hands, native hands, mixed hands? Every hand that shaped this land had pine resin clinging to their hills." This journey isn't theory for me. It's ancestral. Yes, it's inheritance. At Cameron Hill Presbyterian Church Cemetery, I saw Argyll, America with my own eyes. On one side, Scottish names, McLean, Cameron, Brown. A few yards away, my Afro-descendant ancestors, often buried in unmarked graves, their stories just as rich, their lives just as valuable. That cemetery taught me history isn't a thing we visit. It's a thing we carry. And keeping quiet watch over those who passed Cameron Hill stands Flora MacDonald historical marker, the exiled Scottish heroine herself, reminding us that every story in this land is tangled into every other. That spirit, the spirit of unexpected intersections, followed me to Campbell University. Cambule in Gaelic means cricket mouth. And yes. And the story of Campbell is as crooked and beautiful as Argyll, America itself. Its founder, Reverend James Archibald Campbell, a white man of Scottish descent, was led to Christ, not by a white preacher or believer, but by a black man, a descendant of slaves. That experience shaped his faith, his life's work, and the founding of Campbell University, a place that would go on to educate thousands, including me. That's the spirit of Argyll, America, a spirit that crosses lines that history tries to harden. That spirit followed me down the tobacco roads of my childhood. Not the fancy tobacco road of ACC sports. Oh, by the way, I'm a Carolina fan. Yeah. Any Duke, Wake, or Wake Forest fans here? Okay. Again, not the fancy tobacco road of ACC sports, but the real ones, lined with rustic tin roof barns and flue-curing leaves, where the air carried the scent of survival. On my tobacco road, black and white, many of whom were descendants of early Gaelic-speaking Scottish immigrants and workers, often but not always African-American generations removed from slavery, worked side by side, not always equal, but always connected. Tobacco was our shared crop, our shared labor, our shared resilience. It was where we gained our appreciation for nature and the mutual respect between the races. And in that connection, in the rhythm of the work songs rising over the fields, you will find Argyll, America. Why this matters now? Why does this story matter now in 2025? Because the fight over history is the fight over who belongs. Mill Prong isn't just a house. It's a mirror. It shows us who we were. It challenges us to see who we are. And it invites us to decide who we want to be. If we have the courage to tell the whole truth. True sustainability isn't just ecological. It isn't just about protecting the land, though we must. It's cultural. It's about sustaining cultures, languages, and values. Preserve the house, yes. But if we forget the hands that help maintain it, we preserve only a shell, not a spirit. Sustainability means preserving all the stories, the Gaelic prayers, the African spirituals, the native wisdom. How many of you have seen or performed a controlled burn of a pine forest? I know, Ray, I know you have. Okay. Yes. The longleaf pine teaches us survival comes through fire. The Cape Fear teaches upstream and downstream are forever linked. Argyll, America teaches when we face the truth, beautiful and ugly, we all grow stronger. I call myself a voice for the voiceless, but today I pass the torch. Whether your family has been here 300 years or 30 years, you're a part of this story. Whether they came on a Scottish brig, a slave ship, or walked this land long before either, this is your story. The question is, how will you tell it? Mill Prong belongs to all of us. Argyll, America belongs to all of us. Our history isn't over. We are still writing it with every truth we choose to tell and every voice we choose to honor. Tapalit, binak, diahu. Thank you. May God bless you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. The book is called Fusion of Cultures and the Spirit of Argyll, America Revealed. So I'm a history nerd, like most people here today. Okay? Right. Well, so that's one thing. So I know the history of the area. I just research on my own. So I know that the Argyll colony where I grew up with a lot of people who are descendants of people who came over on the Thistle in 1739. McNeils, Bowies, and you name it. And the Western Harnett area of North Carolina, which is formerly Cumberland County. Okay, so they're the essence of the name. Argyll colony is in America, Argyll, America. All right, and when I grew up, and in Johnsonville Township, which is in Harnett County, I was always curious as to, on Easter Sunday morning, You had my church, which was Johnsonville AME Zion Church, founded in 1869 after the Civil War. We would gather with Spout Springs Presbyterian Church, which came out of Cameron Hill Church. Of course, you mentioned in my story, I said that Flora McDonald's historical marker, is right there at Cameron Hill. Well, she visited after the Battle of Culloden. She came and she visited her sister who stayed at Cameron Hill. Okay, so I found out that some of my ancestors are buried at Cameron Hill as well. Okay, but back to Easter Sunday, Cameron Hill and Spout Springs, which came out of Cameron Hill after the Civil War, and another church called Hillman Grove, we would all get together at Easter sunrise service, and they still do. And they would rotate from church to church in that area. Okay, and I found that, and as I began to research, I understand the background of that, because before the Civil War, then the descendants of the slaves used to gather in the churches with people who belonged to those churches. So either in the balcony or in the church. So I understood that's in essence is the reason between that fusion, and just a lot of things I brought together in that. You talk about the longleaf pine. Why is it our state tree? Okay, with its history, we see that we are surrounded by longleaf pines, but do we really know the origin of how it became to be the North Carolina Tar Heel State? It's a multiple people involved in that process, but how my ancestors, many of them on my mother's side, worked at the McDermott plantation, which is used to be in Harnett County and Cumberland County. And the McDermott, that deed goes back to the 1600s, from the King of England. And so my ancestors worked that plantation, and the naval stores that came from that plantation, they were shipped down the Little River and ultimately down to Cape Fear to Wilmington, and they helped to supply the tar on the British Naval Royal Army, the naval ships that were number one in the world at that time. So just a lot of things like that. I've had inspiration, Michael Newton, who I mentioned, that you'll see how many of you all have had the opportunity to see the documentary that we're both in? I shared this with my fellow participant here in Voices Over the Water. Okay, yes, it's a PBS documentary. You can see it on YouTube. You can find it on Google Play. You can buy the DVD on Amazon. It was number 3 in the world for historical DVDs last summer. And then there's one Google Play. What is the other one? But you can find it. Okay. Yes. And in fact, in the documentary, I come right behind you all, which is very fitting that we are today. Okay. And and I love your part in the documentary of how you all speak of that. So yeah, she's so humble. But yes, there's a lot of things, just a lot of history. And I found that there's a lot of history, not just in the Native American, African Americans, but also in our cultures, but we don't document it. Okay. There's a lot of stuff we as country people, and I say that because my schlick is, even though I'm in a big city, I'm a country boy from Harnett County, from North Carolina. Okay. But there's a lot of times we don't see what's there, that we have a rich history. We have a tapestry. Okay. But we do. Okay. From what the work we do. And that's why the values of Argyll America are multiculturalism, which is basically the pursuit, is future. It is forward looking. If you read the book, you see it's forward looking. It is the pursuit of racial harmony. It is sustainability, which is, if you grow up in this area, you've got to have a connection with nature. And you have a connection with nature, you have a connection with God and nature. Okay, that sustainability is very, very, very important. And then the resilience of the people in this room, the stories, the resilience of the people, all of you here, is very important. So those 3 values I found in this area. And unlike, as I said earlier, that's why I draw from Paul Green, because Paul Green, if you read Paul Green happened to draw from those same values as well. And he grew up many decades before me. But it's like this. I was walking his footsteps in Harnett County. And it's really amazing. So thank you for your question.
Ernest, do you find it challenging? The story you tell is of this fusion of cultures, and others like Earl Imes, who you've met.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Earl Imes is a brilliant historian with the Museum of History.
Mm-hmm.
He tells history just like you,
Mm-hmm.
and he does so many public programs, but he's challenged a lot of times because everyone's so armed up in this period of time, and the story you're telling, or that Earl is telling, is one that talks about our blended natures.
Yes.
Do you experience that challenge, and then what's that been like?
Mm-hmm. Well,
for you?
Well, I know that it's about the truth. What Earl does is about the truth, and the truth, as I said, it's not. It's a fusion is a blended thing. It's beautiful. It's beautiful, and yet challenging. It's like, I'm not a physics person at all, but it's like atoms colliding. But then again, it's a beautiful side of it as well, and that's the thing. It's a beautiful thing. I have some of my best friends from childhood, are people who grew up, with who are descendants of Scottish Highlander. And as I said, and I admitted in the talk earlier, I said my great grandfather, is a Scottish Highlander descent, Charles Clark. So my ancestors came from Scotland ultimately on that tree. Okay, several generations ago, and that's and I get the name Gilchrist, which is we were talking servant of Christ. Okay, the Scottish Gaelic, and that name goes into my family way back into the early 1800s. Okay, so, but thank you for your question. We still, it's about the message, and we continue to tell the story, and I look forward to continuing to tell the story. Yes.
I just have a comment to your point, and I just have to say that your speech just stirred my soul. Gosh, you have such an exceptional gift for words.
Mm-hmm.
And
thank you.
The metaphors were just so vibrant, and you use the word truthful over and over again. And I'm going to make a bipartisan statement here, I hope, but it's a very concerning time when what you just described is now being seen as un-American.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Where we're in a moment of finally telling our truth, these complicated,
Mm-hmm.
blended, familial stories. All of us have a connection to this place as one pin and a map across this country. And, the African American Museum is under threat of being closed. At least the first and second floors of that museum are going to be shut down. The National Museum of American Indian has been ordered to close down 3 exhibitions. I just reviewed grants for the Institute of Library and Museum Services.
Mm-hmm.
Spent 3 weeks reviewing grants, and they were completely eliminated the Friday that we left.
Mm-hmm.
The Institute of Library and Museum Services no longer exists.
Mm-hmm.
That funds rural museums or museums across the country, libraries, that are
Mm-hmm.
trying to do this work. And I really applaud Mill Prong for having the guts and the conviction to source your own dollars and your own donor dollars to tell this truthful story.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we're just at this moment, hopefully this ephemeral moment in our history, to where we can still privilege these stories. I mean, that we can keep telling our truth in a way that certainly is not defined as being un-American.
Yes.
I mean, you beautifully just explained how American it is.
Thank you. I would say, again, I gave tribute to Mill Prong, and I give tribute to Mill Prong again, and I'm glad to follow Mill Prong in the documentary. But Tina, right, her and Richard Bullock, they come before me, before I come on for the very first time. And
Richard's over there with the camera.
Richard, Ray, there you go. Ray. Yeah. And what's so beautiful about that, and that's why you all should see that, because they represent well. They talk about, when you were filming from right inside here, weren't you? Yeah, and they talk about the fact that Mill Prong is history and a proud cultural history, okay, going back to Scotland and John Gilchrist. But they acknowledge Mill Prong's slavery in the past. And I think that's some of the beautiful thing. One of the beautiful things about that is that yet you acknowledge something that has been preserved over this long. And trust me, it's hard to be able to find a building that has a history that has been preserved over time, hundreds of years. But yet at the same time, there was balance in their statement that acknowledged that Mill Prong's history of slavery. Okay, so I think that is outstanding, and I just want to give another hand for these two people, because they represent Mill Prong well, and I know that I stand here, this platform, behind Miss Chavis. Okay, right. I didn't. Right. And I'm so honored to come to follow behind you. And I heard you. I listened to you twice. Okay, before in preparation for coming here, and the other speakers. I would not be here before you probably if it was not for Michael Newton, who was one of your previous speakers. Okay, he has been instrumental. I'd never been in Nova Scotia, and he invited me to Nova Scotia to speak because he has the courage to speak about all of the Scottish history. And therefore, we journeyed to Nova Scotia to Antigonish. Okay, we anglicize it and say Antigonish, and to speak. And he's been instrumental in his message about we must know it's not this. You can't go back and change the past, but you must be knowledgeable of it or you repeat it. And the fact that the interesting history about Mill Prong is the fact that you two, your ancestor sold it to your ancestor, and then sold it to her ancestor. That's the interesting thing about that. Isn't that something? And today you have me. Yeah. Yes. I'll let you call on people.
Yes, she's waiting. I just want to know, do you have copies of your book, or where can we get it?
Right. Unfortunately, I don't have copies of this book today, but you can find it online on Amazon. Okay. You can go to ernestgilchrist.com, my website, and read up about my projects and stuff like that. See, I'm putting a little plug in, and
information on the program.
and then you can order it that way. In the fall, I'm coming out with a second edition of Fusion of Cultures, and that second edition, this is a self-criticism, okay? And I think we have to be, that self-criticism is that in the second edition, I'm going to do a more adequate job of covering our Native American indigenous culture and the fusion of cultures, okay? And as well as some other topics, and I'll follow up on things since the first time. But yeah, you can find it on Amazon, the Kindle if you don't like to have paper, or you can order the hard copy. Yes.
Have you been able to get some of the stories from the people that basically passed stories on by memory as opposed to the written word? Have you been able to capture any of those in your research?
I think no. I think that that's a very good question, and I just spent a lot of time in archives. From Pinehurst to the University of North Carolina Chapel Hill archives, Wilson Library, which I love, to the Museum of the Cape Fear here near Fayetteville, to others, and I'm going to get down to your all's place soon. I wanted to on this trip, okay, to get to what's the proper name of your
Museum of the Southeast American Indian.
Yes, and that's where I'm going next. But no, I haven't. But I gotten the information from the printed, but not to be. I have not interviewed anyone because I guess they are not alive. But you're talking about taped or video histories.
Things that have been passed down verbally.
Mhm.
I mean, there are stories that can happen like that, and then that way you get some understanding of the personal, the person, as opposed to just what's documented. Because documentation can sometimes be not correct.
Yes, 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 yes. That is correct. It's a comprehensive, as you know, and I take it you're probably a number one historian, educator, or just a lover of history. But the various sources you have, the better. You can always get something to make the stories unique, and that's why when hopefully when you read this, it will take you there, as if you are riding down a country road here, and you saw the canola flowers, the beautiful canola flowers that you see down the road, coming down the yellow ones. See, so I hopefully I've captured that for you. So how many here have read Fusion of Cultures? Okay, right. So there are witnesses here. Okay.
That's a good book.
Yeah, yeah. So, but yeah, and I'm also while here, just to tell you about my other projects. When you go to ernestgilchrist.com, you will see my website, and it'll inform you of a lot of things. I am really fascinated that my ancestors once spoke the Scottish Gaelic. Okay, and you ever heard of Reverend Sinclair? Okay, well, Reverend Sinclair was once the president. He had a son as well, so sometimes we have to distinguish the father and the son. But Reverend Sinclair, the elder, was once he came from Scotland to Nova Scotia to Pennsylvania and then to North Carolina to preach and to teach the Scottish Gaelic to the people in this region. And I think he had maybe 3 churches that he preached to, because since there was no education, the Scottish Gaelic, as you all know, I don't want to bore you, then it was not being taught. It was being lost. So he came. But while at Barbecue Presbyterian Church, it's one of the major Presbyterian churches in this region, then he met a lot of enslaved people. And he left Barbecue Church about 1855. And in 1866, he formed Love Grove AME Zion Church. Okay. So if you go there today, you'll see Reverend Sinclair as the founder of Love Grove Church. But in his writings, when he says that in 1872, he wrote to a friend in Inverness, okay, in Scotland, he said that that the people in the Carolinas no longer speak, they've lost the Gaelic. They don't speak the Gaelic anymore. I'm paraphrasing. But I have met a group of colored people who speak the Gaelic as well as anyone in the Hebrides of Scotland. Okay, and that would have been ancestors of people where I grew up in Harnett County.
What is his name?
Sinclair?
Yeah.
Yeah, Reverend James Sinclair.
James?
Yeah, yeah. In fact, tell me how much time do I have to stand here?
Okay. We thank you for coming.